The Greystone Orphanage loomed. Its ancient stone walls, weathered by time and neglect, stood as a testament to forgotten promises and lost hopes. The wind howled through the cracks, carrying with it whispers of the past, tales of children who once laughed and played but now were mere echoes in the corridors, a bleak silhouette against the biting wind. The trees, stripped of their leaves, swayed like skeletal hands reaching out for something, anything to hold on to. The night was unforgiving, casting long shadows that danced eerily on the orphanage walls. Inside, the air hung heavy with the smell of old soup and unfulfilled dreams. The rooms, once filled with the warmth of life, now felt cold and desolate. The faint light from a single bulb flickered, casting a dim glow that barely pierced the darkness. Keal huddled deeper into his threadbare blanket. It offered little comfort. The fabric, worn and frayed, was a poor shield against the chill that seeped into his bones. He shivered, not just from the cold, but from the weight of loneliness that pressed down on him. He was a shadow, unnoticed, forgotten. In the dim light, he blended into the background, a ghost of a child who had learned to make himself invisible. The other children, lost in their own worlds of sorrow, barely acknowledged his presence. Another orphan lost in the system. The caretakers, overwhelmed and underpaid, did what they could, but it was never enough. The children, each with their own stories of abandonment and loss, formed a silent chorus of despair. His birthday, if it even was his birthday, passed unnoticed. There were no candles, no songs, no gifts. Just another day in the endless cycle of days that blurred together in a haze of monotony and neglect. Just another year older, another year unseen. The calendar on the wall marked the passage of time, but for Keal, it felt like he was stuck in a never-ending loop. Each day was a reminder of his insignificance. No gifts, no warmth, just the cold dread of another empty year. The room with its bare walls and sparse furnishings felt more like a prison than a home. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the old building settling. He clung to the hope that one day, things would change, that someone, somewhere, would see him, truly see him, and offer a hand to pull him out of the darkness. It was a fragile hope, but it was all he had, that someone would see him, truly see him. And in that moment of recognition, perhaps, just perhaps, the cold hearth of his heart would find a spark of warmth. Keal envied the other children. They had stories, memories, faint echoes of families lost. He had nothing, not even a true name. Keal was the name given to him when he was found, a babe abandoned at the orphanage steps. He longed for a past, a connection, a whisper of belonging. He spent his days lost in books, their words weaving tales of bravery and magic. He craved adventure, a life beyond the orphanage walls. A life where he wasn't just Keal, the nameless orphan, but Keal, the hero of his own story. The letter appeared as if by magic. It was a quiet evening, the kind where the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something extraordinary to happen. Keal had just settled into his room, the soft glow of the setting sun casting long shadows across the floor. He had no idea that his life was about to change forever. Materializing on his bed, shimmering faintly, the letter seemed to hum with a life of its own, a soft, almost imperceptible glow emanating from its edges. Keal's eyes widened in disbelief. He had never seen anything like it. It was addressed simply to Keal, the elegant script flowing across the parchment. The handwriting was unlike any he had ever seen, each letter perfectly formed, as if crafted by an artist's hand. It was both beautiful and unsettling. His heart pounded. No one ever wrote to him. In his small, quiet village, letters were a rarity, and he was not someone who received them. The mystery of it all made his pulse quicken. He cautiously lifted the letter, its surface strangely warm. It was as if the parchment itself was alive, responding to his touch. He could feel a faint vibration, a subtle energy that seemed to flow through the paper and into his fingertips. The moment his fingers brushed the seal, a jolt ran up his arm. It was not painful, but it was startling, like a sudden surge of electricity. He almost dropped the letter in surprise. The room pulsed with an unseen energy. He gasped, dropping the letter. The air around him seemed to shimmer, and for a moment he felt as if he was standing at the edge of a great, unseen force. It lay on the bed, pulsating with an ethereal light. The glow was mesmerizing, drawing him in, making it impossible to look away. It was as if the letter was calling to him, beckoning him to uncover its secrets. Fear warred with curiosity. This was no ordinary letter. He could feel it in his bones, a deep instinctual understanding that whatever this was, it was beyond the realm of the ordinary. This was something more, something impossible. And yet it was here, in his room, waiting for him to take the next step. Keal knew that his life would never be the same again. The whispers of magic had found him, and there was no turning back. He picked up the letter, his hand trembling. Breaking the seal, he unfolded the parchment. Words shimmered on the page, written in a language he didn't understand but felt in his soul. The air crackled around him, the room began to spin. A blinding light erupted from the letter, engulfing the room. Keal shielded his eyes, fear turning to awe. The light coalesced, forming a swirling vortex of colors. It pulsed with an ancient energy, beckoning him closer. A gateway was opening. But to where? He couldn't resist the pull. The vortex drew him in, lifting him from the ground. The orphanage, his old life, vanished in a rush of wind and light. He closed his eyes, bracing for the unknown. When he opened his eyes, he was surrounded by a breathtaking vista. He floated in a sky painted with hues he had never imagined. Below him, islands drifted among the clouds, waterfalls cascading into the abyss. He was in Eldoria, a land whispered about in forgotten myths, a land of magic. He landed softly on solid ground, the air alive with the scent of exotic flowers. Before him, a city unlike any other rose into the clouds. Zelia, the capital of Eldoria, built upon massive crystals that shimmered with an inner light, a place of wonder and impossible beauty. Winged creatures, creatures of myth and legend, soared through the air. Their cries echoed through the city, a symphony of the fantastical. He had stumbled into a world beyond his wildest dreams. A world where magic was real and he, Keal, was no longer invisible. He was guided through the bustling streets by creatures he couldn't even name. They led him to a grand palace, its spires reaching for the clouds. Inside, an ethereal woman awaited him. Her eyes glowed with ancient knowledge. The Oracle of Zelia. "You have been summoned, Keal." Her voice resonated with power, echoing through the chamber. Destiny awaits. He learned of an ancient prophecy, of a lineage long forgotten, of an heir destined to restore balance to Eldoria. And he, Keal, was that heir. He was the last of the Arcane bloodline, a lineage wielding unimaginable power. From the moment he was born, the stars had whispered his name, Keal, marking him as the chosen one. His parents, powerful sorcerers, had perished in a great battle, leaving him an orphan with a destiny he could not yet comprehend. His destiny, he was told, was to defeat the Shadow Lord, a being of pure darkness threatening to consume Eldoria. The Shadow Lord's minions had already begun their assault, spreading fear and chaos across the land. Villages were burned and the cries of the innocent echoed through the night. The weight of the prophecy settled upon him. Keal often found himself lost in thought, pondering the enormity of his task. Could he, a mere boy, stand against such malevolence? Doubt gnawed at him, but deep within, a spark of hope remained. He wasn't just Keal, the orphan. He was the beacon of hope for all of Eldoria. The people looked to him, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and faith. They believed in the prophecy, and in him, even when he struggled to believe in himself. He was Keal, the Arcane heir. The blood of ancient sorcerers flowed through his veins, and with it, the power to change the fate of the world. He had to embrace his heritage, for it was the only way to harness the strength needed to confront the darkness. The Oracle presented him with an amulet, a swirling vortex of blue energy contained within a crystal pendant. This amulet, was more than just a symbol. It was a conduit of the ancient magic that his ancestors had wielded. It pulsed warmly against his skin, humming with power. The energy within it seemed to resonate with his very soul, filling him with a sense of purpose and strength he had never known before. This was his inheritance, the key to unlocking his destiny. With the amulet, he could tap into the ancient spells and incantations that had been lost to time. It was a gift from his ancestors, a beacon to guide him through the darkness. The fight for Eldoria had begun. Keal knew that the road ahead would be fraught with peril, but he was ready. With the amulet in hand and the legacy of his bloodline behind him, he would face the Shadow Lord and restore peace to the land. The fate of Eldoria rested on his shoulders, and he would not falter. He stood at the precipice of a grand adventure. The world he knew, the dreary walls of the orphanage, seemed a lifetime ago. Now, he faced a destiny he could barely comprehend. Fear warred with excitement. He was not ready, but he had no choice. He was the Arcane heir, and the fate of Eldoria rested upon his shoulders. He took a deep breath, the amulet warm against his skin, and stepped forward, embracing the unknown. His journey had just begun.